Hello, my
Hello.
name is Linda Comeau, and welcome to Constellations for our upcoming conference, October 5th to 8th in Virginia Beach. We are so excited. And for more information, do check out our website, nasconstellations.org. And today I have with me Karin Dremel, and her topic for the conference is the Matryoshka principle, integration of the fragmented self. Welcome, Karin.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to interview you and hear about this. But before we start, I'd like to ask on behalf of newbies, how do you quickly explain what a constellation is?
Quickly is always the problem, is it not?
Correct.
So it's a group of people who generally don't know each other coming together. And on behalf of one of the people, which usually is called the client or the issue bearer, they join their service and their presence to find out if the issue that is being presented is connected, is influenced by any issues that have been going on in the lineage of that person's two lineages and the lineage of that person's family, and how whatever they experience is influenced by difficult fates, by losses, by exclusions, and so forth.
Excellent. Thank you. And it can be done individually and in a group, right?
And that's where my talk this time sort of veers off from that group-based explanation, in that I use the principles of family constellation, and I use individual practice, and I use individuals who set up their family system, meaning taking a representation in the group, a representative. In this work, it's cups, paper cups. And they set up the system as they experience it in the room that we are in.
Okay, well, that leads very nicely then into your topic. Tell us more about your planned workshop, Karin.
So the planned workshop offers an insight into working with individual clients, if groups are not available, or clients, and this is important, feel too vulnerable with whatever issue they are presenting, or if I feel like exploring something in a more sheltered space would be a good idea. In addition, one specific aspect of working like that is that I can work with internal parts, and this is where it gets very interesting. I call these internal parts little people. It's informed by a number of other people's work, family systems work, but I don't do inner child work per se. I consider these individual parts who can be as big as, a huge crone who is fiercely protecting us inside, or as tiny as a not even formed part of ourselves that is so that needs to protect itself so much that it is not even showing up as formed. And so these parts can be represented in, even nameless, in parts, and set out like a three-dimensional or in a three-dimensional constellation way. So that's this one thing about working with internal parts, and the other approach would be working just as in normal, quote unquote, as in a normal family systems constellation, with parts, mom, dad, sister, brother, great-grandfather, you name it, setting them out in the space.
Right.
Same thing, only one works with internal parts, and the other, and how they may relate to the outside. So there is a conjunction possible, but the other is working just as we would in a group, only that the representatives are the cups, and they and the individual or myself stand in that place.
Now, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you give us, for instance, where this might be advisable? Like, would it be good for a decision, or would it be good for conflict?
It's literally a translation from anything a group constellation can do. No, that's not right. What it looks like, right? So you can use it for conflict. You can use it for decisions. We might specifically also to find resources. So I'm working very strongly resource-based, and some of my explorations in the field is where can we find resources, or where can we add resources if there, and what would that look like, right? I did this presentation actually 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years, whatever, the very first one that I did at the conference. And I remember that at some point in this constellation, about a dozen cups were behind the person. And I had added them one by one by one, and they were all angels. Right? In the person's experience, they were all angels, and she needed not one or two or three. And I encouraged, go on, it's at a hotel, paper cups, plastic cups are everywhere. And in the end, it was about a dozen angels that needed to be behind her before she could step forward into her next move that she was afraid to do.
Very interesting. And are you going to demo this kind of as a possibility in your workshop?
Yes, I think I'm going to do it very, very similar than I have. It's about a 20-minute presentation. Then I open it to as much verbal interaction, questions, whatever you want to call that, Q&A, as people are needing, as the room, as the group, as that system is needing. And then I'm going to offer to do a vignette, maybe, depending on how much time we have, or a constellation, without reining it in from the beginning. But again, depending on how many people are there, but also depending on how much time we have.
Excellent. So this is going to be very interesting for beginners.
Yeah. Yeah, and specifically for people who transition from working individually and may want to use some of this. It's not a full-blown method, even though I can say a lot about it. But you can use parts of this in individual work. And actually, in my office, I have a large group of co-therapists. Of all shapes and sizes and forms, also known as stuffed animals and stuffed puppets and so forth. And I use them a lot, or my clients do.
Right.
Engage them a lot, and actually get to take them in time, specifically for very, very young parts, when we're working with very young parts. And find, just recently, Beaver became a very, very young part of this client, and then Beaver went home with the client.
Wow.
And she visited her family for a week, and reported that Beaver had been rather quiet the whole time. So, there is this playful way of three-dimensionalizing, if you will, relational and dialogical. That's why I'm, so before we started, I told you, for me, constellations, the approach to constellation themselves, the system, the individuals in the constellation, the representatives, is dialogical.
Yes. Excellent. And you have some tools to share with us, 3 somatic tools.
Well, I have to step away or step back a little bit in that at the core of my work, that's what I did. That at the core of my work is working with trauma. And working with trauma in the individual, with biographical trauma, working with trauma in the system, in the family system as ancestral trauma, and working with trauma in the larger system in which any of our lineages has unfolded, meaning social trauma at large, right? Historical trauma, as some people would call it, social trauma, as Nguyen St. Just calls it. And I understand it as a sort of a combination of what historically went on in a society as a lineage is evolving.
Right.
And so we all have difficult fates, great changes, and so forth. When there is trauma, right? When we talk of trauma, something has happened that was too soon, too sudden, too overwhelming, which can come from too soon and too sudden because our system cannot adapt quickly enough.
Right.
And let me see, you said 3. So it was too soon, too sudden, or too much, right? So, and that's my very short mantra for working with trauma, that we have to respond to how somebody or system or even a community got traumatized. We have to make sure we're doing things not too soon, too sudden, or too much.
Right, I love it.
So the tools are to go slow, pacing, right? To go slow. And that differs a little bit from classic constellation, where I might just suggest to somebody, why don't you come over here? Or this is the place where generally people feel most in the order of things, right? So I'm looking not at orders so much, but I am following the evolution of the system as it develops, always looking for places where I can can slow down. So that's the first, but then also where I can offer choice. Trauma in a system, trauma in a person, trauma in a moment leaves us something that is potentially traumatizing, I have to say. Anything, could be a fender bender, right?
Right.
It could be leaving your home because the war is approaching, right? Anything that is potentially traumatizing has left us little or no choice in that moment, right? So giving a lot of choices to people, to representatives, with an invitational language, rather than come over here. I do that too. Don't ever say, well, you said that. No. There are moments when I'm so clear that, or when I say no, right? If somebody says, can I do this or that? I have been known to say no, which, some people felt refreshing. But it's finding that place of being, of adapting to pace and to choice. So pace and choice are the two very, very important things when we work with trauma. And the third I already mentioned is relentlessly resourcing. And specifically at choice points, and specifically at points where people are, where in our client or in the moment or in any representative, the same in any representative, right? Even great grandmother needs to be resourced. And resource, as I just explained, can be a dozen angels, right? Or it can be great grandmother. Or it can be, as some of the colleagues are saying, look for somebody in the system, even if it is seemingly entirely hurt, right? There is somebody in the system or somebody in the circle, if we have the group, or somebody among the cups, so to speak, who was resourced, who had the strength to be that person to help the system continue. Otherwise, guess what?
Yes.
You wouldn't be here, right? So, so resourcing, pacing, and choice are three very simple tools. I mean, to only have these three would make it, would make working with trauma promising. Right, and on both sides, on the side of the so last conference I offered a workshop on trauma, and I set it up as having to enter through a flap on, where trauma was written on the flap. So everybody who would look at the place they chose to maybe be with me, the first thing they would see was trauma. Guess what? I didn't have very much people who were coming, because, and I understood from the dialogue, right, with the people who were coming, it needed a courageous step to even step through that, through that word, if you will, through the phenomena of trauma. But Linda, anyone who's working systemically with family systems, with lineages, with historical and with social trauma, with family systems, will be working with trauma somewhere in the system, be it biographical, be it ancestral, or be it historical and social. So for all of us to become comfortable in the presence of trauma and know when I'm freaking out, it ain't that I don't, right? I mean, that's a lot of no's, but you know what I mean, right?
Yes.
When I am feeling, boy, this is overwhelming. This is so monolithic. This is so big. What am I going to do, right? Slowing down some more, and then slowing down some more, even on my side. Give space, make space in the system for something to emerge that really wants to be seen, even in form of a cup.
I love this, Karin. This is awesome. Oh my gosh, this is very good. Yes. I had heard you were known for taking time and your patience. Yes, this is very exciting. Wow. Well, I'm super excited.
Can I just add one thing? It doesn't make for 2-minute constellations, right? But the individual work generally has an hour and a half anyway, right? So there, what I'm doing is I'm literally working with the nervous system present, right? I'm literally doing work with the physiology of the nervous system present. And a similar thing I do, or the same thing, if you will, I do in a constellation with every nervous system present and the constellation's nervous system. So everybody walks away with an impact on their own nervous system. Give you an example. There was a man with a large system of people, many of whom had been affected one way or another by the Holocaust. And one of the things that this man was experiencing was excruciating tiredness. So it wasn't like he hadn't dealt with this. It wasn't like there hadn't been done a lot of work in his life, but he was so tired. And at some point, I had his representative standing, and the mother and father and the grandparents and several people sort of behind him. And the representative said, I'm so tired. I don't want to lie down, but I'm so tired. I can barely stand. And so I said, okay, so would it be comfortable for you to lie down at all? And he said, I can try it. Because we all know, lying down, the dead, and, But before I did that, I invited everybody to get a chair. Everybody in the constellation to get a chair. And wherever they had been sitting, put the chair and sit down, because I was inviting everybody to rest with him. So I reframed and I rephrased his experience of lying down in front. As everybody is sitting, nobody's uncomfortable, everybody is taking the time this person needs. I don't remember how long it took, but it was very powerful.
That would be very powerful. Yes, yes. You can probably see the shift in the energy around everything.
Yeah, you can feel that everybody's, there are people like you and me standing in for some very unknown person, and still their system had been sort of, it had been poised to that angst.
Yes.
Right, and to that held breath. And in some way, every representative or every represented person got to sit down with their descendant. And I didn't ask them what they were pondering, right? That wasn't the point. Mm-hmm. The point was that their nervous systems could sort of get to a joint place of settling, if you will, until that person, and it wasn't forever, until that representative was able to stand up and turn around and thank them and feel, more strength in the room.
Oh, that is so beautiful. That is gold. Wow.
And that, by the way, that differentiates working with the individual, where I literally very much work with their nervous system, sort of at the juncture between individual work and systemic approach, and working with a whole group, where the individual gets to watch, which of course, that person sat in their chairs with tears running down their, running down their face, and yeah.
Wow, this has been very enlightening. You never fail to disappoint, my dear. This is so exciting. Well, I thank you so much for your time and your generosity for this explanation. I'm quite sure your workshop's going to be well attended.
Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to every single person and every single question.
Yeah. Oh, this is going to be an awesome conference, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay. Well, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Linda.
Oh, you're most welcome. I really enjoyed it. So for our audience, please check out our website, nasconstellations.org. You can find out by downloading the schedule, Karin Dremel's workshop, the Matryoshka principle, integration of fragmented self, and put it on your calendar. And have a great day, everyone. Thanks again, Karin.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.